We continue with chapter 29 of the Magnus Opus of Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Ladi, born 1745, passed away 1813. Those 68 years, which are equivalent to the word Chaim, life, he gave life and meaning to tens of thousands of Jews and millions more after he passed on. In chapter 29, he began to deal with a problem that is quite common for most people who are seekers. We lose touch, we lose feeling. And when you have no feeling and no emotion, it's like spiritual death. And what do you do? So the advice given by the Holy Zohar is that just like a log that's too thick for fire to grab hold of it, so what do? You split it into pieces. So too, a body where the light of the soul does not light and shine within it, you have to smash it into pieces. Ordinarily, that would mean physical suffering. And the Rebbe says, no, you don't have to suffer physically. You have to humble yourself. And the process of learning self-humiliation comes from an honest evaluation. So here we go to the honest evaluation. The first thing is to realize who we are. We have a holy soul, but the holy soul is not the identity of what we feel, because we have to impute it within ourselves. What turns us on are physical things. Good food, nice things, nice clothing, beautiful house, nice car, nice vacations. We are affected by physical things. And since we're affected by physical things, we're really not associated, identified with the soul. Only the righteous who truly transform their bodies into holiness, they are primarily the soul. And when they eat, they're doing the body a favor, because they don't need the food. They don't need worldly pleasures. And so when the body needs something, it gives the body what it needs. But the soul is in charge, and the soul is what shines in those people's. That's what Hillel said, I'm going to go ahead and do kindness with the embarrassed one. And he went to eat breakfast. Because the embarrassed one, the humble one, that's the body. That's not really himself. That's just his flesh. And so we'll continue with chapter 29 for the next lesson in chapter 29, dealing with the intermediate, who is the ordinary person. The average person, even on the highest level, is not a tzaddik. And a tzaddik transforms his physical characteristic into holiness. But a Beinoni, an intermediate, which is the ordinary person on the highest level, he doesn't do that. He remains with his physical self. So he says as follows: Avol beBeinoni, but the intermediate means between the righteous, the tzaddik, and the rasha, the wicked. So the intermediate are the people who do only good things, but they don't transform their natures into good. Since the essence of the animal soul, which enlivens the body, which comes from the opposite of holiness, which is engarbed in one's blood and one's flesh, has not been transformed into good. So since it hasn't been transformed into good, then if it hasn't been transformed into good, this animal soul is the person himself. The person is an animal. Who are you? Who am I? I'm just an animal without a tail. But I have a mind, and in my mind I have a holy soul. But my brain and my heart and my limbs are all part of this animal, which we call the human being. But it's an animal soul. What is an animal soul? An animal soul is something that wishes to survive and wishes to have physical pleasures for as long a sustained period as possible. V'imkein, if that's the case, that's the person. The person's identity is the animal soul, is hurochik me Hashem betachlis. Harichuk, he is at the ultimate distance from God. Why is the person, no matter how much good the person does, but the animal soul is at the ultimate distance from God? So he explains, there is the ability, the power to desire passion. And that's physical. So the desires in our body, yochel gam ken lisavis l'dvarim hoasurim, the power to desire can also desire things that are prohibited. And therefore, shehem neged ritzayin yizbarach, which are against God's will. Even though the person doesn't wish to do them in actual, but still the person would like to enjoy those things. They're not disgusting by him, behemas, in truth. Like by the righteous, as explained earlier in chapter 12. Because the righteous, the tzaddikim, are able to transform their bodies and their emotions and their feelings into goodness. And what that means is that the desire of the tzaddik is for holiness. He doesn't have a trigger that wants a Lamborghini, or wants some furs, or wants a trip to the Bahamas. That's not in his agenda. The tzaddik's desire is for holiness. A person who is physical, he may study Torah all day, he may pray all day, but he would like to have comforts. He may not know the comforts that are found out there in the world. I know a little bit about them, but the comforts that he knows, he wants those comforts. The more comforts he knows about, he wants those things. Because the animal soul wants animal pleasure. The godly soul wants godly pleasure. But since the person identifies with the animal soul, therefore, the person himself, even a righteous, a good person, identifies with animal pleasure. That's the person. That's who I am. And that's who you are.